I'm Peter Taubman. I'm a resident of Durham.
Where you went to school?
And having moved up here fairly recently, I have no political axe to grind. For many years, I was a teacher in AP in New York City public high schools. And part of the curriculum that I taught addressed issues of genocide. And while all of us condemn genocide, of course, what often is overlooked is that what often leads to genocide and what often initiates it are scurrilous attacks on targeted groups and their acceptance by respected public officials. So this is not a question of free speech. This really is a question of understanding that public figures have an obligation and a responsibility to protect and to respect their constituencies. Now, as a private citizen, Mr. Cash has every right to hold his racial and religious and gender prejudices, and he's every right to express them, no matter how sophomorically he does so. But as a member of the school board, as a public figure, and as a purported educational leader, he should be, at the very least, censured for publicizing remarks that I think bring shame to this board, and even more, that legitimate for our kids views that they, I am sure, would find addressing the worst in human beings. It's in the best interest of this board and community that this man resign. Asking that the remarks be taken as jokes, I think, only turns the members of this school board into jokers and makes a joke of this community's educational leadership, which should be aimed at protecting all of the members of its constituency. Thank you.
Pranananda, Durham. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I understand the law or I know what the law says, but I'm going to read a part of the Student Conduct, Discipline, and Due Process Safe School Zone, which I believe you are voting on today. Inappropriate student conduct that causes material and substantial disruption to the school environment, interferes with the rights of others, or presents a threat to the health and safety of others will not be tolerated. Students will conduct themselves in a manner fitting to their age level and maturity, and with respect and consideration for the rights of others. In this policy, it talks about suspension, it talks about expulsion. And I believe that the people who are writing this policy should be held to the same standards that the students are held. If our actions aren't tolerated when we do something like this, why are the adults on the school board? You said this is PG humor. PG stands for parental guidance. I want to ask the parents in here of high schoolers, parents of, a lot of people here are parents of elementary schools. Would you want your kids to be hearing this and see this as acceptable? It's not just a problem locally. One of my friends pointed out that there's an article on this in the Boston Herald. It has spread. Do we want this to be the reputation of Oyster River? Me as a student, I don't want this to be the reputation. I care about the school deeply, and I don't understand why this is being tolerated. I personally am Hindu. My parents both are Indian. The tweets may not point out me directly, but I still feel violated by them. I feel I'm as American as the next person, even if I am still culturally Indian, I'm still culturally American. I have friends who are gay. I have friends who are women. They have all felt violated by this. A gay rising senior who's gay asked me to read this. I'm disturbed that I'm being represented by someone so homophobic they would compare homosexuality to polygamous hostility, and I feel that anyone with such extreme prejudice could never fairly represent my best interests. You were elected to represent the best interest of everyone in the school district. How can we think that you're representing everyone when you make these such comments? I ask you today, are you comfortable with someone who makes these kind of comments, whether it's PG humor or not, to be a figurehead the school of your kids attend? I stand here and ask to please resign, because I don't feel comfortable with it. Thank you.
Rotner, and I'm a resident of Durham. I was going to speak about the hurt and harm caused by the comments of Mr. Koch, but prior speakers, many of them have done that much more eloquently and probably more personally than I could have, and I'd like to let that stand. Mr. Koch, I think the point many have made, has done nothing illegal. Congressman Weiner, who resigned from the House of Representatives, did nothing illegal. He did something morally that was repugnant. I found the comments on the Twitter account were morally repugnant. Congressman Weiner was forced to resign when his colleagues came against him and said that he had lost the moral support of the other members of Congress and that he had lost their respect and he'd lost credibility. I give Mr. Koch credit. Initially, Weiner denied even making those, sending the pictures. At least he owned up to having this on his account. But I think the comparison then moving on is that people need to take responsibility for their actions and for the hurt that they've caused, the harm that they've caused, the lack of respect, and the lack of credibility. If Mr. Koch can't see his way to resigning, I call upon the school board to talk about this issue and to make comments about whether they believe that he should remain on the school board or not. I realize under New Hampshire law, the school board cannot request him to resign, but that doesn't make it not possible for the school board to discuss it and have a vote whether they would like him to continue on the board or not. It's Mr. Koch's decision, but I think the community needs to see that the school board does not support comments like this in our community. I feel if they do not do that, or if they speak about Mr. Koch's behavior and vote in favor of him staying on the school board, then the school board itself will lose credibility in our community and respect. I think that's the way we need to move forward here. Thank you.
Ruth, Wharton-McDonald, Durham. I live in Durham, and I have 2 kids in the system now. I agree with a lot of what the previous speakers have said. I'm not going to rehash all of that. I think ultimately, I would agree that legally, he's on the line, right? We're probably not talking about legal infractions, but we're talking about morals and ethics, and we're talking about leadership. These are the leaders we put up for our students, right? This is what they're seeing. These are the role models. We're saying these are the role models, right? You grow up, you take part in citizenship in a democracy, this is who you are, and at the same time, we have policies that seem to be in direct conflict with the comments that we've been reading. I think for all the effort that we put into teaching our kids to use respectful, safe ways to address confrontation and disagreement, to use alternatives to name-calling and insults, and especially to understand and respect members of different genders, religions, ethnicities, cultures, orientations. How is it that one of the adults in charge of decision-making thinks it's appropriate to make public comments of this nature? Moreover, at a practical level, we as educators and as parents teach students to be very wary of anything they send out via social media, right? How often do we tell them? We tell them all the time, right? What you put out there doesn't just go to your friends. It goes to everyone. And even if you think you take it down, it's still out there, right? We tell this to our kids starting well, as soon as they get on the phone, right? And apparently, Mr. Koch, who I believe is a technology educator, is just learning that now. Not exactly the role model we had hoped for in a school board member. I share the concerns of others about Mr. Koch's ability to work with not only women, but with many members of our district, adults or children, who happen to differ in some physical, cultural, or ideological way from Mr. Koch himself. In a district already struggling to rebuild community processes, and a lot of people have referred to that tonight, we really can't afford to continue to be sidetracked by the behavior of one of our school board members who clearly doesn't represent the mission of the district and potentially poses liability issues, although I would agree, maybe. As a parent, as a Durham resident, as an educator myself, I ask that Mr. Koch resign from the board. As a community, I think that we can do a lot better for our kids, for our teachers, and for ourselves.
Before you go, we've had a lot of people talking about the tweets. Is there anyone who wants to talk about anything else? Okay.
Bad timing.
How many more people want to talk? Raise your hand. Okay. Can we be concise? All right. Let's get through it then.
I'll try. My name is Peter Sweet. I live in Durham. I've been here for almost 40 years in this district. My daughters went to the district here. I've never been to a school board meeting ever in Oyster. I watch you on TV all the time, but I've never been. I've been a principal in the state for almost 40 years too. And the only reason I'm coming tonight is I was appalled by Jim's actions. We have standards in schools. I deal with preschool all the way up to 8th graders. There's not a 3-year-old all the way up to 8th grade I would ever tolerate these kind of humor, jokes, whatever you call them, online. It's so inappropriate. I think you have the perfect opportunity now. I know it's not illegal. I know the board can't censure you. But the part that I see is you have a perfect opportunity to be an educator and to step forward and take responsibility for your actions and resign from the board. So I just want to say that I was appalled. First time I ever came. Hopefully I will never come again. But I just want you to know how I felt as a human being.